the national TV audience reach cap. In 2004, Congress specifically directed the FCC to set this cap at 39% of U.S. television households, and it has remained at the same level for 22 years. Now, as several major mergers loom, the FCC is considering lifting or eliminating this cap. Some argue that lifting the cap will allow broadcasters to scale, to invest more in local news outlets across the country, and to better compete with deep-pocketed tech companies. Others say lifting the cap will consolidate viewpoints and hand control over to newsrooms in New York and Hollywood, choking out local views. But more fundamental than the optimal policy is the law.
Imagine a time when a single broadcast could bring the entire nation together. Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show, the Apollo 11 moon landing, historic debates shaping American politics. Today, that shared experience is gone. Cable, streaming, social media, they've splintered audiences and transformed how we consume news. So the question is, do century-old broadcast ownership rules still make sense in a world where anyone with a phone can reach millions? That's exactly what the Senate Commerce Committee is here to explore.
Good morning. We interrupt this program for a Senate Commerce Committee hearing on media ownership in the digital age. For over a century, broadcast media stood at the epicenter of American historical and cultural life. It brought the nation classics like I Love Lucy and shaped the music landscape with Elvis or the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. Twitter being what it is, I watched the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show yesterday. And wow, they were young. It showed Americans the realities of war, the wonder of the Apollo 11 moon landing, and the defining political moments of their time. From the Nixon-JFK debate to President Reagan's clarion call to tear down this wall. Through these shared viewing experiences, broadcasters helped to embed iconic moments in the collective American consciousness. The media's power to frame events and shape public perception is substantial. So it is understandable why Congress placed limits on broadcast media ownership, intended to prevent a monopoly on programming and viewpoints. Indeed, for much of the last century, holding a broadcast license was often called a license to print money. With limited competition, station owners commanded massive audiences and steady profits. But that era has passed. Cable and satellite ushered in 24/7 news, while the internet and mobile technologies unleashed a wave of streaming services, news and entertainment sites, and social media, flooding American screens with endless content and fragmenting what were previously universal audiences. Today, broadcasters are fighting to stay competitive against media and tech company with national and often global reach. This raises an important question. Are long-standing broadcast media ownership rules still relevant in the digital age? And if so, to what extent? In recent years, some of these rules have been rolled back or eliminated. Whether more reform is needed or if today's status quo remains sound policy is what we will explore today. In the Telecommunications Act of 1996, Congress anticipated the rise of today's competitive market by directing the FCC to periodically review its broadcast ownership rules with an eye towards deregulation. That's what statute says right now. Every 4 years, the FCC was to decide whether to repeal or modify any regulation that no longer served the public interest. One rule, however, was deliberately set out: the national TV audience reach cap. In 2004, Congress specifically directed the FCC to set this cap at 39% of U.S. television households, and it has remained at the same level for 22 years. Now, as several major mergers loom, the FCC is considering lifting or eliminating this cap. Some argue that lifting the cap will allow broadcasters to scale, to invest more in local news outlets across the country, and to better compete with deep-pocketed tech companies. Others say lifting the cap will consolidate viewpoints and hand control over to newsrooms in New York and Hollywood, choking out local views. But more fundamental than the optimal policy is the law. It may be the case that the FCC cannot modify the 39% cap because Congress set that number in statute. I look forward to hearing these perspectives and more today. If there's one thing that's clear, it's this. Current media ownership rules were written in a vastly different technological age. The days when broadcasters built a uniform global village across America's living rooms is over. As media has splintered into thousands of websites, TikTok accounts, podcasts, and other form of content, each catering to its own niche audience. Yet even in this fragmented landscape, the media's ability to shape national discourse remains incredibly powerful, making questions about market concentration as important as ever. This hearing is designed to inform Congress in answering these questions. Should Congress revisit underlying statutes, and does the FCC have appropriate authority or flexibility to address today's evolving media landscape? I'm grateful to our witnesses for being here today to help us in this effort. And I now turn to Ranking Member Cantwell.
For decades, broadcast media shaped American culture, from music and sitcoms to historic news events. Owning a broadcast license was once a guaranteed path to massive audiences and steady profits. But that era is over. Today, cable, satellite, streaming, and social media have splintered audiences into countless niches, making the media landscape far more competitive. Congress created rules to prevent monopolies and protect local viewpoints, including the National TV Audience Reach Cap, which limits any broadcaster from reaching more than 39% of U.S. households. Now, as media companies seek mergers to compete with tech giants, these rules are under scrutiny. Some argue lifting them will let broadcasters invest in local news and innovate. Others warn it could concentrate control over the national conversation, sidelining local voices. The debate isn't just about policy, it's about law. Congress set these caps in statute, leaving questions about whether the FCC can change them in today's digital age. As media continues to evolve, lawmakers must decide how to balance competition, local reporting, and diverse viewpoints. The future of media ownership will shape how Americans experience news and culture. Stay informed, because these decisions affect not just what we watch, but what we hear and believe.